All right, everybody. Just a quick video to talk about a little bit about the logistics of writing a research paper, getting it turned in, hitting deadlines, things like that. I get a lot of people who, whenever you start writing either your 595 or 518 paper, that's what it is for your master's program. And even if you decide to go on and work on a doctoral degree and you have to write a dissertation, it's a similar process, similar thought pattern. So let me kind of throw this out here. Has anybody ever started to write a research paper of any kind and just stared at the paper? If so, you are not alone. So I get a lot of that kind of idea, comments coming my way. I don't know where to start. I'm just staring at a blank page. Those kinds of things. So some ideas for what might work for you. And some of these are kind of old school. There's a reason why I started you out with, start with your literature review, okay? That's why I started you guys out with, look for 6 articles that tie into your topic. So if you look and see what other people have written, this does a couple of things for you. So the idea is, first of all, whenever you're looking in the literature, it should tell you what other people have written about and what's already been done. So if there's a study that's already been done, I don't know, say you want to talk about after-school tutoring programs and whether or not they're really increasing student grades or something like that. Well, if that's been done to death in the literature, then you may not want to do that. Or maybe you look and you say, hey, this is what's going on in the literature. There's a lot of after-school programs, but I'm looking for the gap, is what they call it. So you want to look for a gap in the literature. And what that means is maybe there has been a lot of information on after-school tutoring programs for public schools, but maybe it's only been at the middle school level, not at the high school level. Or maybe it's only been in big cities, not in rural areas. So if you can say, hey, look, everybody's done this, but they've done it in public schools in big cities, in middle schools, and I'm going to do it in a rural setting with high school students. You know, that's how my literature, my article, my paper here is going to be different from everybody else. So you're looking for a gap in there. At the same time, you want the literature to support. So there's one thing, but the other thing is you want it to support you. Support your hypotheses that you're going to write. Hypotheses. You want it to talk about background. So maybe we need to talk about why do we even care about tutoring to begin with. Background information. If there are some studies out there that show you that after-school tutoring programs are very successful and they've replicated this over and over in different locations, that kind of thing, then maybe that's why we want to talk about tutoring. Maybe we just need to talk about what exactly kind of tutoring are we talking about here. Is it peer-to-peer tutoring? Is it teacher-to-peer? Is it a specific tutor that's been trained in some way? What are we looking for? So the literature review gives us that. And the third thing is sometimes it can give you a starting point. Starting point for either for ideas for topics. Some of you may not still have a topic yet, or starting points for methodologies. How did they do that? What kinds of groups did they set up? Pedagogy. What exactly are we doing with our students in the classroom? That kind of thing. But maybe it can give me some kind of a starting point where I can say, hey, let me just start here. Okay? So that's what I would say first of all. Start with the literature review. Number 2. Well, not really number 2. Index cards. I know that sounds so old school, especially in today's way of technology and everything. And by the way, you can do index cards or sticky notes, that kind of thing, electronically now. So there are technology equivalencies to my index card idea. But what the index card does for me is, one, it makes up my reference list. Okay, so if I've got, I don't know, Joe Smith wrote this article here, and he said, here's this lovely quote that I want to make sure that I have, then I can put those things on my index card. I can label it one, and I can maybe put a sticky note on that book, or I can just keep a running list, a reference list, something like that, that lets me know Joe Smith is number one. And then it allows me to come back and later make sure that that's in the reference list. Now, an interesting thing, you have to make sure that anything that's in your reference list is actually referenced in your paper. I know that's crazy. Back in my day, we did things that were called bibliographies. So basically it was exhaustive. It was anything that you even looked at all. If you open that book, baby, you better put it on your bibliography that you looked at it. And you might have to have, I don't know, 100 books on your bibliography. So the idea being that this is not a bibliography. This is a reference list. So we really want to refer to these things. If we're not referring to them, then we don't count them. And I know that kind of stinks for some people. And at the same time, if we quote somebody in our paper, they better be on our reference list. We can't make a quotation in the middle of our paper and then not have a source for that at the back of the paper. So we have to make sure if you cite it, it's in your reference list, and if it's in your reference list, you cite it. It's a really great way to think about that, okay? So you have to double check it both ways. And in fact, whenever I am on a committee where I'm looking at somebody's thesis paper or their 595 paper, that's one of the things that I will go through and do. I will check every reference and make sure it's been cited at least once in the paper, and I will check every citation, every quote that is in there, and make sure there's a reference at the back. So you got to watch out for that. So it helps me with my reference list. The second thing is, and it might sound weird, but I like to go through and just read all the books, and as I find stuff that I think, hey, that quote might fit, it really says something that I want to get across, that I don't think I can just word it in a natural way. I think that they have a really way of words, and I want to quote them for your paper. Okay? So if that happens, it's easy to put these onto index cards, and as you're reading, you just quote it, or you say, you know, page 22 of the Joe Smith book, and you can start it, you know, after school tutoring, blah, 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 blah. And just kind of make yourself page 29, second paragraph. Something like that. Just a little note. You don't have to write the whole stinking thing down unless you want to. Well, there's a couple of things. If you have to take these books back, say to a library or something like that, then go ahead and dump them, right? And write the whole thing up. But if you don't, if you can refer back to those books, it might save you a little writing if you just kind of give yourself a note. This is the quote that I'm after. Okay? So you can do that. And then the third thing that it does is it starts your paper, or it can start your paper. So a lot of people say, I don't know what to do, this paper is blank. So what I like to do is, first of all, organize your quotes into similar topics. Okay, if some of your quotes are about poor passing rates on the STAR exam in the math, In Texas schools, if you've got a bunch of those that are about that, then you might group all those index cards, they all go over here. And then if you've got 5 different index cards that are quoting about tutoring services, then those might go over here. So you just sort them, organize them by similar topics, and then once you have them like that, you just type everything into your document. So it's somewhat arranged by topic. So like here I said star, and it'll be quote 1, quote 2, quote 3. And I'm not doing anything here except for just typing that stuff up. And then the next topic might be after school tutoring programs. Quote 1, quote 2, quote 3. Okay, I'm going to tell you that I did this whenever I was writing my dissertation because I was just so frustrated. I didn't have anywhere to start, and I didn't know what to do. So literally, I just typed all of those quotes up. And believe it or not, whenever I had all of my quotes typed in, I had almost 10 pages written of quotes. Now, my dissertation was a 100-page paper. Yours isn't going to be that much, but I have seen some 595s that are close to 100 pages. 50 pages is nothing, okay? So if this gives you 3 to 5 pages of quotes, then hey, I know I've got at least 3 to 5 pages. That's progress, right? So then what? Okay, I've just got a bunch of quotes here. Okay, start writing connecting things. Connectors. Okay, so I don't know what it was. Smith said, blah. However, Jones has a difference to encounter view, blah, 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 blah. Here's his quote. And so you can start making connectors, and then maybe I need an intro. Maybe I need a conclusion about the STAR testing. Maybe I need an intro into the tutoring section. Maybe I need to tie those quotes to sure that it's not just, it can't be a run-on quote whenever you finish. It's just that putting all the quotes in there gives you a starting point, and that's what we want. We want to start. We don't want to be staring at a blank sheet of paper. So if you get all those quotes stuck in there together, then yay. Now I've got 5 pages. If I put in all those connectors and intros and conclusions, maybe it's 8 pages by the time I get there. So the more of that kind of stuff you can do, the easier it is to get more pages on paper. Okay, and sometimes it's just that beginning. What do I do with this? Now you can come back and you can edit and you can tweak. And maybe you go, oh, I don't like that quote after all, and you can take that out. Who cares? Just get started. Just put something down. That's the whole idea, right? So that's what index cards can do for you. Just giving you, topic areas and things like that. And they make it easy to shuffle them around. If you go, oh, I don't want to talk about STAR. I want to talk about this one particular pedagogy. Okay, quote 3 has something about that pedagogy, and so I'm going to pull this guy out. He's not going to be in STAR anymore. He's going to talk about pedagogy, and you can just rearrange very easily. I know that's kind of an old school concept, but sometimes there's a reason why in middle school and high school our teachers taught us to write the way they did. It wasn't just to give us filler assignments. Sometimes they actually work. Some of those techniques are useful, okay? So I had to go back and think whenever I was working on my dissertation, how do I write a research paper? Oh my goodness. How do I write a book? I don't know. Okay, so just start stringing the quotes together, and then after you've got those, make your connectors. I think you'll find that you have a lot working for you in that way. All right. Let me see what else. Connecting sentences, intro phrases. Okay. One of the things that you'll see in your D2L is the templates. And these are for our Math 595 papers, but I think that they're pretty universal. And what is their name now? I'm sorry, Dissertation and Thesis Office. I know it's not that. I'm going to call them DNT for right now, but I know that that's not their actual title anymore. They changed their name. But anyway, the dissertation and thesis office has templates of their own, and they're very similar to these. So you'll see generally, no matter what program you're in, they'll have some kind of a thing. And what you should do is let the template guide you. Okay, and what I mean by that is they're going to tell you, look, chapter 1 is your literature review. Actually, probably chapter 1 is your intro. Sorry. Why are you even doing this? Chapter 2 is your literature review. I know, I got too eager. Chapter 3, maybe that's your methodology. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? What's your plan? Okay, so they'll have stuff inside of this. Maybe chapter 1, there's an intro. Maybe there's some subparagraphs that say, okay, and here you're going to do this. Intro of the topic. Over here you're going to do what's my hypothesis question, whatever. So research questions, I'm sorry. So let the template guide you. Sometimes just looking at it rather than, okay, that's a topic, look at it like a question, okay? Whenever you see methodology, you should be thinking, what is my methodology? How am I going to approach this particular problem? What am I going to do? So I think that if you'll let that template guide you, a lot of times it will help. Okay, one more thing that I put this into some of your papers in D2L, so I want to make sure that we hit it. Deadlines. This is a big deal for research papers, for thesis papers, for dissertations, for all of it. So if you're working and they've got a deadline, it's really important, first of all, that you hit those deadlines, especially if you're writing a thesis paper. If you don't hit a deadline, it can change your graduation date, okay, and not in a good way. It can postpone your graduation date if you don't hit deadlines. So you have to watch out for that. For instance, say that, and I'm just making this up, say that April 30th is final submission of your paper, your thesis, okay? And I'm just making that date up. It changes every year, so who knows what it is. Okay, so is it feasible to think that you're going to present your thesis to your committee and make your oral presentation and get feedback and make revisions and get that final draft to the thesis office if you do your oral defense on April 28th? No, there's no way you're going to fit all that stuff in. So what I like to do is I like to work from a deadline and go backwards, okay? Backwards in the calendar. Okay, and in fact, one year I actually worked with a group of about 7 people who were working on their 595s, and they were coming up on the end of their time period for when they were able to submit their 595, or else it was their total 6 years in the master's program, and if they didn't finish their 595, they would start losing classes towards their degree, which would mean that they would have to start retaking those classes, right? So what we did was I worked backwards with them, and I said, look, let's look at this. I'm not making up arbitrary deadlines for you. I really know you have to do X, Y, and Z, and we have to have certain amounts of time for that, so let's look at it. Okay, so for instance here, if you think that you can make revisions in 1 week, finish editing in 1 week, which is possible. I did my entire editing for my dissertation over a July 4th weekend. So It's possible to do all of your editing with the final revisions in 1 week. It's living and breathing that and not getting much recommended, but it is possible. Okay, if so, then whenever we look at that and we say, okay, then we have to do our presentation. Our oral presentation 1 week before this, I'm just going to cheat, is going to be April 23rd, right? Okay. Well, that's the presentation, and that's all fine and good, but that's not enough. It's not enough to just walk in on the 23rd because your committee needs to see it. Needs to see your paper. Okay? They need to have time to make revisions and to tell you things are good or things are bad or, hey, consider this, and maybe get you some feedback if they can before your oral presentation, but for sure on the day of. Okay, your committee is going to want to see that. Now, if I'm on your committee and you try to give me, if you're defending on April 23rd, and you try to give me your paper on April 21st, I'm going to be not happy with you. And you don't really want your committee members not happy with you. I'm going to gripe at you, and I'm going to tell you how I don't have time in 2 days to look at this. I need more time, blah, blah, blah. Courtesy says 2 weeks. Okay? To the committee before your oral defense. Before you go to make that oral presentation, if I'm on your committee and for sure I need this paper 2 weeks before. Well, looking at that, I think that's April 9th. Okay? Now that's all fine and dandy, except that what? Your committee doesn't get it until after your advisor gets it, right? So your advisor wants to look at it and make sure it looks good and they like what's going on before you send it to the committee because they don't want to be embarrassed because you have some really crazy mistake or your English is terrible and you need a proofreader or something like that. So April 9th is great, but maybe your advisor needs it April 1st. And some advisors want, that's just 8 days, right? Some advisors may actually say, I need it 2 weeks before you give it to the committee. So we're sitting here saying, look, your final draft is due on the 30th, but you have to have your very almost final draft. It's not a rough draft. It is the draft that you are willing to give to your advisor and your committee by April 1st. That's a whole stinking month. Okay, so you just have to kind of plan that and kind of work backwards in your schedule to do those things. So for instance, if you need that on April 1st, then that means that you need to be writing by, I don't know, maybe spring break. Writing final results up. I'll say March 15th. That's like eating and breathing and sleeping your thesis here. Okay, which means that I have to have my results by maybe March. Results in, coding, whatever you're going to do, interviews, whatever you're doing, your data. You know, I probably want that by March 1st. Okay, and you just keep working your way backwards. You say, okay, well, if I'm doing that, if I'm doing, say, a survey about after-school tutoring programs, maybe I'm surveying teachers, maybe I'm surveying students, then, okay, I'd better be in the school system, I don't know, beginning of February, trying to gather some data, right? And if I'm going to do that, then I probably need to back up and do the IRB in December, probably. I mean, I need to, if I'm gathering data in February, then I probably need to have consent forms out to teachers and parents in January. So you just keep on backing up until you have basically listed out every detail that you need to do. Okay, I know I need to do my literature review. I know I need to do this. I know I need to do that. I know I need to do this. And you keep on putting those back there and backing up the deadline. Well, now we're all the way back in December, right? Working on IRB and things like that. So as I go through and I tell you stuff like, go ahead and gather papers for references. You can do that on your own. You don't have to have an advisor as long as you know. You don't have to have an advisor working with you as long as you know your advisor is okay with your topic. Okay. So whenever I say go ahead and gather reference papers, you can do that on your own. Go look at the databases. The more of that kind of stuff you do up front, the better. Okay. Speaking of templates here, as I did earlier. You guys have had the templates in your D2L for a while now. They're still up there. They're due on day 8, turning these things in. You guys, I don't remember all of them. Look at day 4, day 5 for exactly what all you had to do. But you had to do the cover sheet, the copyright page, the acknowledgments. Some of that stuff you don't have to do any kind of research for, right? Acknowledgments. You know if you have family members, loved ones, children, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, grandma, whoever who have supported you. You know if you have teachers that have been valuable. You know if your advisor has worked with you. You know these people, and you can go ahead and do your acknowledgments. You don't have to wait on that. That's one thing you can knock out and get out of the way. The last paper in a thesis or in a 595 should be your vita. And in this case, they do not mean like a resume. In this case, they actually mean your life history in a very concise way. So I was born in Commerce, Texas, and I went to the Commerce public school systems. Then I taught in Greenville for 2 years. Whatever that is, just kind of some of your life facts, not getting into the nitty-gritty of your life, but just the overview, the wide brush marks, right? And you can do that. You can turn in that vita. Go ahead and get it done. That's why I have you doing that for Thursday. So look at those template pages. They're due this week, and start getting them done. I think that's the basics of the logistics for me. I know that that's the stuff that people stress out about. Deadlines. What kind of format, by the way? I didn't say anything about that. It really depends on your discipline. Most disciplines accept APA format. If you look in the databases, a lot of times they'll create some citations for you if you tell them what format you want. You just have to be careful and double check them because those aren't always perfect citations, right? So make sure that they actually match with APA format. Most disciplines will take that. Some, if you're math or science, they might want MLA. Okay, so just be aware of whatever formatting is wanted in your discipline. If you're doing something through the dissertation and thesis office, they probably want APA formatting. And they'll track things like how big are your margins? Do you have hanging indents? Things like that. So make sure that you actually go. You don't have to purchase the book. Back in my day, we had to purchase the book. But all this stuff is online nowadays, so you can go and find all of the manual online, or at least information about it, and make sure that your paper is in the proper format. Okay? So just double check everything before you start writing. But I think that's the most of what I have for logistics of getting your thing done. Backtrack on the calendar. That's really important, guys. Make sure you can do it. That way you'll hit the deadlines and your graduation won't be delayed. All right, that's it for this. Thank you.